Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Allison Sclater, Pro Bono Counsel at Morgan Lewis. Delighted to be here for this training and information session today about the Health Justice Project and their fantastic work that we can support through our Pro Bono program. To kick us off, I'd like to turn it over to Yvonne.
Thank you, Allison. Thank you very much. It is great to be here. And we're just going to put the slides away for a second so that we could just see each other and not have the slide all up in our face. So my name is Ivan Espinosa. I'm the Executive Director of Lawyers for Civil Rights, and I'm joined by my wonderful colleagues this morning. We have had a terrific pro bono relationship with many of our friends and colleagues from Morgan Lewis. So it really is a pleasure to be here with you guys this morning. And I want to thank Allison for always helping us to make magic happen on the pro bono front. It is just terrific. And the conversation this morning, we're going to get into the nuts and bolts of SSI claims, which are really critical resources to help stabilize low-income households, low-income families that have experienced hardship, that have experienced illness. I can't stress enough how much in low-income communities, particularly during the pandemic, as families are being affected by the confluence of illness and employment challenges, how incredible these resources can be to help families push through hardship. And so our goal here is to make sure that you guys are familiar with the process of applying for these incredible benefits, which we hope you guys are going to look at the information and say, we can do this, right? Like this is, although it's complex for our clients, it's something that we can do as lawyers to facilitate the process. And so we're going to go through this, and my colleague, Maraida Melendez, who's a whiz on these issues, is going to walk us through this process. She's the director of our Health Justice Initiative, which connects low-income patients to this type of free legal support. And so with no further ado, I want to turn it over to Maraida, and I want to thank you all, and thank you, Laura, for joining us camera on. Always wonderful to see that. And my colleague, Eliza Davern, is going to be behind the scenes working the magic with the tech pieces. If you guys need anything, please just plug it into the chat. But in the meantime, I'm turning it over to Maraida. We're going to be in excellent hands. Maraida, why don't you take it away, introduce yourself, and then we could get the slides up after Maraida introduces herself.
Thank you, Yvonne. Good morning, everyone. We are very excited to have you here with us today. My name is Maraida Melendez, and I am the director of LCR's Health Justice Program. And we'll open up the slides. Perfect. So today we will be giving a brief overview of the Supplemental Security Income Program, known as SSI, and explaining the process of requesting an appointment to file for benefits. I will leave time at the end of the presentation for questions, and my contact information will be shared in the chat. Let's get started. So, one second, please. The SSI is a federal program that provides basic financial assistance for senior adults and persons with disability. There's no age requirement for those who have little to no income or resources. The average monthly benefit is $624 as of January 2022, and the maximum monthly benefit, if single, is $841. The maximum monthly benefit for a married couple is $1,261. In most states, the recipient will automatically qualify for Medicaid upon receiving SSI. So we will be discussing eligibility. However, any client that is referred has already been found eligible by LCR. So it is not something that you would necessarily need to engage in. So we're providing the information. In order to be eligible, the client will have to fall into one of the following categories. They have to be 65 years of age or older, blind, any age, have a disability, any age, have limited or no income and resources. They must be a U.S. citizen or national or a qualified alien. They must live in one of the 50 states, Washington, D.C., or the Northern Mariana Islands, and they must not leave the U.S. for a full calendar month or 30 or more consecutive days. This is basic information on where a person would be able to file the application. We would ask that those that are filling it out with you do the electronic version, which would be through the SSI.gov website, where you would be able to help the client create an account. Moving on to the next slide. Applying as non-citizens, and again, all of the clients that are referred will have already been deemed eligible. The basic requirements are they should have been assigned a Social Security number on or after January 1st, 2004, authorizing them to work in the US, or have a B1, D1, or D2 non-immigrant visa. They have to satisfy all eligibility requirements on slide 3. They have, and immigrants to the US on or after August 22nd, 1996 are not eligible for SSI unless they are a qualified alien and meet a requirement that allows qualified aliens to receive SSI. These are the qualifying alien categories. I won't go into all of them, but the ones that we will mainly be working with are number 5, those granted asylum under Section 208 of the NIA, asylees, or number 8, you are a direct family member who was a victim of battery or extreme cruelty by a family member while in the US. So these would be people who have received a VAWA form of relief as a form of relief or a U visa. Next slide. So these are the conditions for the qualifying relatives to receive SSI. They were receiving SSI and lawfully living in the US on August 22nd, 1996. You hold an LAPR and have 40 qualifying quarters of work. You are a veteran and your discharge was not because you are an alien or on active duty in the US Armed Forces, or you are the dependent child of certain US military personnel. You are lawfully living in the US on August 22nd, 1996 and are blind and disabled. Or qualified aliens may receive SSI for a maximum of 7 years from the date DHS gave them the immigration status in categories 1, 4, 5, 6, or 7 from slide 7, and the status was granted within 7 years of filing for SSI. These are some resources, mainly the application checklist, the SSI application portal, which is what we will be using. Clients can be provided this phone number. It is the National Organization of Social Security Claimants Representatives, and they can call that number if they believe their SSI application has been wrongfully rejected. And on the right side, we have required documents for applying, further information for non-citizens, and eligibility restrictions for immigrants. So we're going to go through the actual process of the application. When you come in, the first tab will explain the benefits application terms of service. In order to move to the next screen, you will have to select where it says Privacy Act statement in blue and agree to the statements. And then next. So on this tab, you will see the documents that the clients will need. LCR will have provided this beforehand. You will be able to select start a new application or return to a save application process. In one of the next slides, you see you will be given a number that is called a reentry number where you'll be able to return to a saved application process. To the right, you see that there's a video explaining helpful hints for applying online, information about Social Security programs, other ways to apply for benefits, and the client's right to representation. On this tab, it's asking us who is completing this application. We ask that you would select the second one that says, I am helping someone who is not with me and therefore cannot sign the application at this time. That will prompt this screen, and this screen will ask for your basic contact information in relationship to applicant, because the volunteer attorneys will not be entering their appearance. There is a selection that says other, and that is the one that we would ask that you select. Information about the applicant. So here they're asking for the name, social security number, date of birth, gender. If the applicant is blind or the applicant has low vision, even with glasses or contacts. And during the last 14 months, has the applicant been unable to work because of illness, injuries, or conditions that have lasted or expected to last at least 12 months or can be expected to result in death? It will then populate the screen that gives you that re-entry number. We do ask that you notate that in the file and provide it to the client as well, because that will allow them access to the bottom portion says their official date of application, and they're going to need that date in the future. So here you would start putting information in about the client. It's going to ask their address, their phone number, the best time to call them. And the next box is very important, the ability to communicate in English. Many of our clients do not speak English, so it is important in order for them to get their forms and letters in their language of choice. So if we select no in any of those boxes, on the bottom, you can enter their preferred language for speaking and their preferred language for reading. The next tab will ask birth and citizen information for the client. It's going to ask for whether they were born in the United States or other, and ask if they are a US citizen. The next tab will ask if the client has used any other social security number, if they have had any other names. If you select yes on that second question, it will auto-populate some cells for you to input other names that they may have used. They will then ask if the client is currently married. If you select yes, it will ask for the name of the spouse. Children, if the client has any children, it will ask for the names and date of births of the children. It will then ask if any of the children became disabled prior to the age of 22, if any of the children are unmarried and under 18, and if any of the children are unmarried, age 18 to 19, and still attending elementary or secondary school below college level full-time. Military details is the next question. It will ask if the client was in the military prior to 1968. The next tab is going to ask employer details for the client, whether they worked for an employer in 2021, whether they worked for an employer in 2022, and whether they worked for an employer in 2023, or whether they will work with someone in 2023. Any of those that are, you select yes, will prompt below for you to enter that information. Self-employment details, here you will enter information if the client was self-employed in 2021, 2022, or expects to be self-employed in 2023. The next tab will ask if the client has ever worked outside of the United States, and if the client agrees with their earning history as shown on their Social Security statement, Most of our clients do not have a Social Security statement, so we typically select the not sure or client does not have a statement. Total earnings for 2021, it's going to ask all of the wages and tips earned in 2021. Clients don't typically know, but it does allow you to estimate if necessary. Did the client work outside of the United States for salary, wages, or self-employment in 2021? And below it asks for special payments. Do any of the total earnings include special payments paid in one year but earned in another? Work not covered by Social Security. It's going to ask if the client has ever worked in a job where U.S. Social Security taxes were not met, were not deducted or withheld. Direct deposit details. Many times the clients will not have a bank account. And if you come across this and they do not have a bank account, that is okay. LCR will work with them to make sure that they have it when they get the phone call to complete the application. If they do have it, great, we can input the information. And if they don't, it's not a problem, we'll work with them. Does the client intend to apply for Social Security income? We always select yes. That way they will run eligibility for any other program that the client may qualify for. Previous applications for Medicare, Social Security benefits, or SSI, it will ask if the client has previously applied for any of these. Ability to work. Are the client's illnesses, injuries, or conditions related to work in any way? And is the client now able to work? So if we've referred a client, the client is not working. So that would be no. Has the client applied or intend to apply for any workers' compensation or other public disability benefits? Money from employer. Has the client received money from her employer on or after the date she became unable to work? And does the client expect to receive any money from her employer in the future? Other dependents. Does the client have a parent who receives 1/2 of her support from her? If we select yes, it's going to give you the option to enter that information. Remarks. So it's going to ask you if you would like to provide any additional information to this application. We would prefer that this be left blank because most of our advocacy occurs on the phone call that we do when Social Security calls us for further information. So this can just be left blank. SSI for children, this is a different process. It's relatively shorter. Children under 18 can get SSI if they meet Social Security's definition of disability for children and are limited income and resources in the household. Social Security defines a disability as the child must have a physical or mental condition that very seriously limits his or her activities, and the conditions must have lasted or be expected to last at least 1 year or result in death. This is the first screen that will populate in the portal, and it's similar to the other if you open the Terms of Service and Privacy Act agreement in order to move forward. This is the personal information of the person you are assisting. So this would be the child's information, their name, their phone number, phone type, mailing address, and email of the parent. Here we enter the child's date of birth. And here we would enter the child's Social Security number. This asks about the child. Do they have a physical or mental disabling condition that has lasted or expected to last 12 months or result in death? Are they blind, or do they have low vision even with glasses or contacts? What date did they have a physical or mental disabling condition? And this date can be approximate. The way I word this to the parent is, do you remember when your child received their initial diagnosis? Most parents will typically tell you summer of 2019, for example, and that's fine. You can estimate the date. This would be your information. Entering your information here does not put you as attorney of record. It's just for Social Security to track who helped them. Similar to the adult application, you will be asked what language the client prefers speaking and what language they prefer reading. And this is so that Social Security, both phone calls and mail, can be in the language that they prefer. So this is the tab for special circumstances, and it's going to ask if the child meets any of these: military casualty, wounded warrior, veterans affair, 100% disability, homelessness, medical condition that is untreatable and expected to result in death, needs sign language interpreter services, needs visual accommodation, recently received from a correctional institution, or none of the above. And here I cut it because it had some personal information, but here you will see everything that you have input during the process. You can double check to make sure all the dates are correct, the names are correct. It is very important that the name of the child appear exactly as it does on the Social Security card, or the application will be rejected. And then once that you've looked everything over, you can agree with the electronic signature and submit. You will then receive this confirmation. So it says, what can I expect next? They will schedule an appointment for the client to file SSI and other benefits they may be able to receive. The client will receive a date and time of appointment by mail in 7 to 14 business days. What will happen at that appointment? We will help you figure out if the client's eligible for Social Security benefits, including SSI. And it says, because our applications can be complicated, our goal is to use the meeting to help the client understand and complete the application process. Is there anything else I should know? We cannot make a determination until the application for benefits is filed. So this is essentially a request for benefits. The actual application will happen on the phone, and I will have entered my appearance, and I would be on that call with the client. And that's it. Do we have any questions?
Thank you, Marita, for running through the slides. I think it was particularly useful to see what the actual application is and just go screen by screen, because it helps to see that it is relatively accessible, and it requires the completion of different data fields that you have to work with your client to secure that information. But it's not a crazy lift, right? This is relatively discrete. I'm wondering, Marita, on an average matter, how long does it take for you to go from start to finish, just in terms of time commitment? I said discrete, but I think it would be useful for people to know what to expect. Every case is different, of course, but what would you say?
Usually for the adult, I would say around an hour and a half. And if I'm using interpreter services, I would probably add another half hour to 45 minutes.
And since the applications don't require the submission of a notice to appear, right, you're not on the hook for ongoing legal representation, which I think makes it particularly discreet. And so we're looking at several hours of pro bono work as opposed to an engagement that's going to continue to drag on. We love things that drag on too, but these happen to be things that are fairly discrete and insular in terms of the facts that you're dealing with. It is really fact intensive. Maraida, how much do you have to dig into medical diagnosis? How much do you have to understand some of the health or science elements here? Because I know that scares some of us, speaking with a nice statement.
Yeah, so in the beginning, in this part of the process, it's very little. We do some of that before we would refer them to the volunteer attorney just to make sure they're eligible. We would assess their medical condition to see if we understand that they would qualify to be deemed disabled. But all of the actual medical evaluation comes before or after, and that would be me before I engage in the phone call.
So thank you for raising that. So we would at LCR, as Maraida just laid out, be screening the prospective clients ahead of time for both the, for example, immigration nuances, which I know were kind of dense. So you don't have to worry about, oh, which of these 12 really complex immigration categories does the client fall under? We would do that ahead of time. And so the person you're interfacing with is eligible and qualified because we have determined that, done that analysis in advance. The same thing with the medical or health pieces to make sure that they are qualified as disabled. And so we would do that pre-work so that we are giving you clients that should be a little bit more wrapped up in a bow, as opposed to you having to start from scratch, trying to do determination of immigration eligibility or determination of disability eligibility. And to be clear, we do that in partnership with doctors at Mass General Hospital, so that we're working directly with the providers, and the providers are actually the ones making the referral. So already the providers have been thinking about this process and supporting their patients. And so we have a pre-established relationship with the physicians, whether it's for adult medicine or pediatric medicine, at MGH community health clinics in Chelsea, Everett, and Revere. So we're interfacing with the providers directly. And thank you for dropping the information into the chat, Eliza. We're interfacing with the providers directly and have access to those medical records and that information. So that's how we make the eligibility determination early on in terms of screening, is with the providers. And so the folks you're dealing with are all going to be receiving medical care from Mass General, not from Mass General main campus, but from Mass General's community health clinics out in Chelsea and other low-income communities. And so we're working with that particular patient population, which makes them really, I would say, well-positioned, because as you can imagine, as the applications are getting reviewed by government officials, the weight accorded to or afforded to a Mass General physician is really strong. And so the applications have a high likelihood of success based on provider collaboration and partnership. And so the folks you're dealing with would have already gone through that MGH screening process, and then also through internally Lawyers for Civil Rights income screening, immigration screening, so that that facilitates the referral. But I want to open it up to questions and or comments. If people have questions, comments about the presentation itself or about the other nuances we've been teasing out through this chat.
I have a question or a request, I guess. It would be great to hear a little bit about kind of the mechanics of the referral process when we take on clients. You know, what information will you give us? What will the follow-up be? If the client needs language assistance, I know we had talked about accessing the language line through MGH, but just kind of some of those details would be great to hear.
Sure. So MGH has agreed to allow us to use their interpreter service line. So that it's very simple. It's a phone number, and I could send an email out with the information as well. But we are working internally to coordinate the referral process. However, if there is an attorney who is interested, they can contact me and we'll coordinate.
Yeah, and so we're thinking here, Allison, this might seem more familiar to you than to other colleagues joining us. We're thinking of using a similar system to the way we've done referrals for small businesses, where we provide, like through an email blast, a short description of the particular matter, a little bit of background on who you would be working with. So let's say you're working with a single mother who lives in Chelsea, who's low income, whose child needs to apply for SSI, or who herself needs to apply for SSI. So we're going to give you a little bit of a glimpse into who you would be supporting. I think that's important, just so you know who you're committing your time to. And then we would also provide you with the more detailed information about the client, and make that connection and make the language line available in the event it's a non-English speaker. And so once that referral is made, let's say that referral goes to Laura. Since you're on camera, I'm going to pick on you. That referral goes to Laura, right? Because Laura has availability and has opted in. Then Laura would be able to initiate the process of calling the client and continuing to, we would have done the initial client intake. So we have that information and we'll pass that to the attorney. But then the attorney could just take the baton, continue to dig in terms of client information, and start the process through the portal that we just walked through with Marida. And so that's what we would imagine the process to be, us providing a number of options and having law firm attorneys opt in to the representation and picking up where the intake left off, essentially, and walking the client through that process. And throughout the process, of course, the language line is available, and we are available to provide any support as needed, right? So if a person says, oh, I got stuck with this question and I don't remember what the training was about, we are always available to walk people through that. So we will provide that additional pro bono assistance and technical assistance through the process. And so that's what, as an initial matter, we're thinking about. But if there's a easier way, better way, preferred way with you guys, we defer to you.
That all sounds great, Yvonne. I guess just to get to the end of the process, when we have connected with the client, we've completed the application in the portal, then it goes back to you before anything gets submitted, right? So do we communicate to you that like the draft has been completed, or kind of what would be the process there?
I think if you communicate with us to let us know if you've experienced any issues, right? So that we can touch base. The folks on the line here with us today are, top shelf attorneys, and we know that they're going to address this with a high level of zealous advocacy and professionalism. So I don't think you need to double check with us to submit. I think if anything, just to make sure there were no issues and just to flag for us that the submission has been accomplished. And then that way we can continue to monitor and do any type of follow-up. We want this to be an easy lift for folks. So no need to check in unless you have an issue, or it is just to report that the matter has been closed for purposes of the assistance you're providing, and then we can take it from there.
Got it. Okay. And just so I'm clear, so when it's submitted in the portal, then the follow-up notifications will go to you.
Correct.
Okay.
The client will typically get a letter within 7 to 14 days with an appointment. So once it is submitted and that is communicated to us, I would enter my appearance and then continue with the process.
But this front loading this pro bono work is huge because of the immense backlog we have right now, right? So if we don't get these applications submitted through the portal, the benefits get delayed, right? And so just getting the application submitted through the portal gets them in the game, gets them in the running. And that allows for the benefits to be triggered much faster and to be accessible. And so this would be hugely helpful for us just because of the sheer volume of folks who, we've been conducting the intakes, but we still have them on a waiting list because we don't have the capacity to walk them through the application process. And it's hard for them to go at this alone. Our clients are amazing and really uplifting and inspiring, but they also don't have the best tech savvy. They're not necessarily sophisticated around some of these issues. And so that's where the volunteer support to help them through the portal process is huge. And then that gets them that gets the ball on the government's, on the government's court. And so that's a huge help for us. And so that big lift is really what we are shamelessly asking for your help with, guys, so that you guys help us put people into the pipeline. And then once the portal portion is complete and you notify us that it's done, we can continue to monitor those matters in-house. We have Marida, who directs this process. We're also joined today by Charlotte Hendren, who's a fellow at LCR, who will be working closely with Marida throughout this process, and Eliza's joining us as well. And so we have folks internally who would then take the baton once you let us know that this submission has been done and that they're ready to go. And so really, we just need to wait for the government to respond and follow up with that.
Great. Well, on that note, what is your backlog looking like? I mean, how many applications can we take on?
I would say
on board.
I would say for SSI, there's probably about between 60 and 65 cases, and we're getting
wow.
I would say between 8 and 10 every week.
Wow. And these are all coming through the 4 sites where you're working now?
Yes.
Yes.
Through Chelsea, Everett, Revere, some of them through pediatrics, some of them through adult medicine. But yeah, when we say backlog, we mean backlog, which is why we really wanted to get this collaboration off the ground. And of course, to be clear, we're not looking at you to take all 60, but if you do, hey, you would be my new best friend, right? But making a dent in this would be huge, right? And so even if attorneys volunteer to take 1, 2, or 3 periodically, that's huge, right? That's huge because that is, an entire new household that has access to the resources. And so please, no pressure to come up with 60, but certainly we can send you a list of maybe 5 to 10 to start off with, and seeing if those would be a good fit, and taking it from there, and periodically continuing to circulate some. We try to triage, to borrow language from our friends, the doctors. We try to triage in terms of which families or children seem to need the most assistance, and so we would start in terms of the backlog triaging, and if all things are equal, then we would just go to the person who's been waiting the most.
Great.
Hey, Allison, it's Jerry.
Hi, Jerry.
Hi. What's our internal process for this? In order to take these on, I mean, do we treat them as clients for our purposes and have engagements signed up, or do we treat this as, we're just helping out on the front end of the process? We're not filing any kind of notice of appearance. What's our role and how do we deal with that internally?
Right. Good question. Thank you for asking. So this would be limited scope. So I think we don't have to open separate matters or do engagement letters. What I would imagine is I'll just open one matter for this, the way we do with, some of our other clinics. Like we do small business clinics with lawyers for civil rights. So it would be similar to that. We would do a quick conflicts check when we're going to be helping a new client, but that's all we have to do is like that quick clearance, and that would be it. Since there's no adverse party here that we have
Right.
to worry about.
Got it.
Jerry,
And in terms of the process, I mean, how do we conduct this? Is this all remote? I mean, is it like a Zoom meeting or a physical meeting or a phone call? I mean, how does it typically work?
All of my appointments are conducted by phone.
Yeah. Okay. And will they have access? Will the client have access to the screens that we're looking at, or they're not necessarily? I mean, we're actually just asking them questions so that we can populate the screens.
Yeah, so you would be asking them questions. They would not have access. They would be provided with the re-entry number in case at some point they wanted to enter it themselves, but it would be us.
Right. And so our names will be on there. There's that one screen you showed where we would put our contact information as the person that's assisting the applicant with the application. I mean, what happens to that information? I mean, would we ever be contacted, or does this just get turned over to you folks and you take it from there?
Well, as Social Security tracks that information. I'm not sure necessarily what they do with it, but some of the other options are mother, father, neighbor, friend. So it doesn't necessarily have to be attorney. They internally track it. I've never heard of them contacting somebody who helped to fill out the forms.
Right. Okay. And so there's no qualification requirements for the person who's providing the assistance. It could
Correct.
be anyone. Got it. Okay. Very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.
so Jerry, also a couple of comments there with the conflicts piece, and thank you for raising it. That's why I was thinking of providing 5 to 10 names so that you could just run conflicts for a group instead of doing it piecemeal, just in terms of efficiency. And on the tech piece, Jerry, we have a lot of clients who don't have access to devices, right? And so the phone is really the easiest way so that it's less imposing on the client. And I think in terms of you were referencing qualifications, Jerry, you guys are all more than amply qualified. I keep thinking also about this. Allison drew the analogy to the small business legal clinics. I also think about it in terms of other things that we've done in the legal community, like emergency rental assistance applications. You don't have to be an attorney to fill one out, but the applications are dense, similar to what you guys just saw. And so walking clients through that is super helpful. And there's no ongoing representation, right? So you're not putting in a retainer, you're not signing a representation agreement. Obviously people run conflicts checks. But I think about it analogous to that as well, where you're helping a client through a dense and complex application process, but there isn't that ongoing representation, or I wouldn't qualify it as that type of advocacy, which I think makes sense for the way that Allison was characterizing it for treatment internally within the firm. I think that would be consistent with the way we've done the small business clinics, that we've done limited scope work with emergency rental assistance. So this would be along those lines. And I think that makes a lot of sense. And it keeps the process easier, more discreet, and it reflects the nature of the transaction.
Right.
We will need some sort of acknowledgement from the client that they understand and agree to the limited assistance. I mean, again, similar to what we've done with other clinics, and we can, talk separately about kind of the mechanics of that because I know that's probably something you do kind of when you're screening. But then we would want our volunteers to then kind of confirm, their understanding of that when they initiate a call to complete the application.
That's a great point. And yes, we will incorporate that into our intake process. Folks that we believe would be good candidates for pro bono placement, we will expressly, very explicitly ask if they consent and agree to that limited scope representation, understanding that they will not have ongoing legal assistance. We will use all of that key language. We can touch base, Allison, if you want that in writing or whether an oral confirmation would be sufficient. We can defer to the firm on the mechanics of that, but certainly we can take care of that up front as well.
Great.
We have sample language that we use for small businesses for those clinics. That has been really successful. I'm going to have my team reach out, our HealthJustice team reach out to our small business team and get that language, and then we can look at it and see if we need to modify it. But we could start there, which is language that we've used for years successfully with you guys. And so we'll start there, Allison, and then we'll take it from there.
Sounds good.
So are we all ready? Are we all ready? 1, 2 of these?
I think so. You had me at 60 to 75 people on the waiting list who need help. Let's jump in.
No, this is great. So maybe in terms of next steps, we can close the loop on the limited scope language that we want to use with the clients and start compiling a list of maybe 5 to 10 proposed referrals so that the folks joining us today can take a look and see what makes sense for them to take on.
Sounds good. And everybody who's on today from Morgan Lewis, I guess, let me know if you're ready to take on, one of these now. Otherwise I'll reach out to you first when we have, a set of clients, ready to work on, and obviously we'll recruit others within the office. We had other people who were interested who couldn't join today, who are going to be watching the recording. And then recognizing that this is a new project, we may be tweaking kind of the mechanics of how we work together on this as we go. So thank you everyone for your patience as we kick this off.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you guys. We're grateful.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.